Welcome to Women Mastering Midlife, where we dive deep into the rich complexities of womanhood in our middle years. I'm your host, Victoria Bird, a pharmacist, certified women's health coach, and your guide on this transformative journey. Whether you're navigating perimenopause, thriving in menopause, or mastering midlife's many transitions, this is your weekly dose of expert guidance, compassionate support, and a judgment-free space to explore it all. Here, we're empowering women to master midlife on their terms, reclaiming our health, our happiness, and our power. Together, we'll rewrite the narrative around this remarkable stage of life, from something to dread into a beautiful, bold transition. I'm so glad you're here. Today on Women Mastering Midlife, I'm joined by the incredible Dr. Nadine Macaluso, a licensed marriage and family therapist, trauma bonding and narcissistic abuse expert, and author of the powerful memoir, Run Like Hell, A Therapist's Guide to Recognizing, Escaping, and Healing from Trauma Bonds. You may know Nadine from her earlier life as the former wife of the infamous Wolf of Wall Street, but today she brings her hard-won insight, clinical expertise, and unapologetic voice to help women understand and heal from toxic relationships. Nadine combines lived experience with decades of clinical training to teach each woman how to reclaim their power, rebuild trust in themselves, and create lives filled with emotional safety and freedom. Whether you've experienced trauma bonding, struggled with people-pleasing, or are learning to set boundaries in midlife, this conversation is for you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Victoria.
So before we hit record, I was telling you that I binged this book, mix of Audible and reading it. And, your story is fascinating. I have a whole bunch of questions for you, but the first thing I wanted to say is even in the introduction, when you were talking about the ultimate gaslighting experience of your former husband being able to write this book and then having it picked up, and it becomes this $500 million movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean, there's nothing that helps you wonder if your reality was real or not, seeing it on the big screen.
Yeah, it's so correct, right? I write in the book, it was the ultimate gaslight. Yeah, because, my life with him, with the Wolf of Wall Street, my ex-husband, was very traumatic. I always compare it to a Greek tragedy, right? And so I finally left him and I moved to California. I was like, okay, this is all behind me. But then he writes a book while he's in jail and then it becomes a movie. And the movie is not from my perspective. It's not my lens, right? So, when you're in a trauma bond, it's always about the other person and what they feel and what they need and their perspective. And so the movie just really carried that theme straight along.
It's like, just when you think you're done, it's like, whoa, it's in theaters everywhere.
Exactly.
So obviously your relationship with your former husband inspired you to write Run Like Hell, but what did that title mean to you specifically?
What it meant to me was that, well, first of all, I didn't even come up with it. Honestly, my publishing house did. And when they first said it to me, I was like, it's not academic enough. That was my first response. And they were like, no, Nadine, it's good. And then it is good because really what it means is that there's no working it out with a pathological person, right? And I think when we enter into our trauma bonds, our relationship with them, we come in with the hopes of this beautiful romantic connection. And we keep doing anything to try to make it work. But really, at the first signs of red flags, you need to run like hell.
Yeah, absolutely. So in your book, you talk about your own personal experience, but you also talk about some of the women that you've worked with along the way. And even though they all have unique stories, there's a lot of underlying similarities in their partner. And so when people are thinking about toxic relationships, abusive relationships, I feel like people who aren't in one have this idea of, this horrible, monstrous person that everybody can see coming a mile away. But what are some of the similarities that are kind of sneaky in these toxic, narcissistic, or pathologic relationships?
Yeah, so at the root of a trauma bond is that the pathological person wants power and control over their lover or partner. And so they use the weapon of coercive control. And that is when somebody is forcing you, pressuring you, making you do things that you don't necessarily want to do. And they do it through intimidation, domination, threats, being passive aggressive, isolating the person from their friends and family. And usually what happens is that in all of these relationships, the relationship centers around the pathological person's needs, wants, and desires. The other partner, the victim, has to really lose her identity to keep the relationship alive. And so those are some themes that you see no matter how it's enacted in these trauma bonded couples that are occurring.
Yeah, and I've seen, you talk about the violent act of the dad pulling over on the side of the road and throwing his daughter in the trunk of a car. Yes. And that's very blatantly aggressive. But then you also, I've seen you talk about the fact that, there's financial abuse in ways that, some people may not see. You live this big flashy life. You're wearing designer clothes, you're driving nice cars, you live in a big house. They're not seeing the control that is still being held over you.
Right. Because what makes another part of a trauma bond is that we have to be dependent upon the person. Right? So that's part of that dynamic as well. And financial dependence can occur if one of the partners is the main breadwinner. And often the pathological person will be like, you don't need to work. I got this. I got you covered. Right? So it's under the guise of caretaking. But what's really happening is they're controlling you financially, making you hyper dependent on them, through controlling the bank accounts, through micromanaging your credit cards. In my case, it was having me sign documents that I had no idea I was signing, right? Falsifying tax documents, doing things behind your back financially. So there are so many ways that financial coercion can occur.
And it's not just as blatant as people think of,
No, because it could be as subtle as, what did you buy today at the store? Did we really need that butter? Did we really need that mustard? And you're like, I'm a grown woman. I know when to buy mustard and butter for my family, right? But that's the micromanaging that is invisible to other people, but really slowly starts to chip away at the victim.
And oftentimes the women are taking care of all the household expenses. They're buying things for the children. They're buying things for the spouse. They're buying things for the home. And it all just sounds like it's things that you're spending money on that you may not necessarily need, but it's for everyone else and running the house.
Yeah, of course. And that's the whole thing about the control, is that this pathological person doesn't care about anything about that. They just want to control you. So they're not seeing the big picture of what you're doing. Exactly. That's a really good point.
So you lived through and escaped a high-profile toxic relationship. How did that experience influence your path into therapy?
Yeah, so what happened was when I first met my ex-husband, he was so crazy and our life was so grand that I said, I got to get myself into therapy. So I put myself right into therapy at like 23, 24, because I was like, there is no way I can manage this, him, the drugs, the house, none of it. So I put myself into therapy, and I went to my therapist's office every single Monday at 1 p.m., like Pavlov's dog, because I was living in such madness, and that was like one sane place, one sane container that I could go to where I could talk and I wouldn't be judged. And I believe that me being in therapy saved my life. I think that if I wasn't in therapy, I don't know what could have happened to me. I could have gone crazy. I could have been dead. I really don't know. So when I left him, and then it was around 38, I was switching careers. I was a fashion designer. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go back to school to be a therapist because therapy saved me. And that's why I did it.
So you were in therapy while you were still,
yes,
you were in this relationship. It sounds like you were in therapy for a really long time. So you clearly knew something was wrong, but it took you a really long time to leave.
Well, and also it took me 8 years. And you have to remember, back in the good old days, right? This 25 years ago, nobody was talking about narcissism. Nobody was talking about trauma bonds. And I was clearly experiencing domestic violence, but nobody was saying that to me. It's so strange. So I had so much cognitive dissonance, and I was so confused. I knew what I was experiencing was wrong, but I didn't have the words. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote my book, is to give women the words, the terms, so they can understand what's really happening to them.
Yeah, and trauma bonds are, so it's kind of funny because you're saying how before there weren't words for it, and now I feel like there's almost this pendulum swing to where things are they're overusing trauma bonding, and they're overusing narcissism, and and so can you explain what a trauma bond actually is and how it differs from a normal toxic relationship?
Yeah, there can be toxicity in all relationships, right? Because human beings weren't perfect. We might yell, we might have a white lie, we might, really be mad at our partner for a day, argue over, what car to buy or what school to send the kids to. I mean, that's normal situational couples fights, that's what we would call it. But in that relationship, the pathological partner does not want power and control over you. So that's what's at the root of the trauma bond. And for a trauma bond to exist, it has to have two conditions. The first one is a power imbalance. The pathological partner has the power, and they abuse and exploit that power to get their needs met for money, power, pleasure, and status. And, how does somebody get power? They have money, just the very fact that you love them. Or the way it was with my ex was he was dominating and threatening to me. I feared him. So he had power. The second piece is intermittent reinforcement. And this is when I call this pathological partner Dirty John and Romeo. Okay.
Okay.
So I don't call them that in the book. I call them Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But all the young girls were like, what does that mean? Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They didn't know who that was, so I had to change the name.
Yeah.
So initially you meet this loving, wonderful partner. You think you met a unicorn. They're generous, kind, and helpful. They're just everything you ever thought you would want in a partner. As some time goes on, the mask starts to fall, and out comes Dirty John. They're lying, they're cheating, they're betraying, they're controlling. And so what happens is that they have two different sets of behavior, right, within the relationship. And so 70% of the time, the partner's cruel, controlling, betraying. But 30% of the time, they're that Romeo, kind, generous, and helpful. And it's that mix of behaviors that actually creates the bond in the trauma bond. And I think in my book, I said animal trainers that use intermittent reinforcement, the animals bond to the trainer 230% more than just straight kindness. So when people say, why does she stay?
Yeah.
This is why she stays, because intermittent reinforcement is a behavioral experience that you kind of get addicted to because you're always hoping Romeo's going to come back.
Yeah, I read somewhere it's kind of like sitting at a slot machine.
Yes.
And you keep putting a nickel in and a nickel in, and all of a sudden you've got all this money invested, and maybe you get a nickel that comes out, but you're like waiting for that jackpot, and if you get up off the seat, somebody else might get your jackpot.
Yes, that's exactly it. That's the perfect analogy for it. And so those are the things, right? So it has to have a power imbalance, and it has to have intermittent reinforcement for it to be a trauma bond.
Okay. And so many of the women that have experienced these kind of relationships, they're brilliant, they're strong women, they have careers, or they're driven. And so a lot of people wonder, like, how did they end up in this situation? Why are they staying? And it can be really hard for the victims to come out and express what's been going on because of that.
Yeah, and that's what happened. So I became a therapist, and I really didn't want a specialty. I wanted to help everybody. Not children, because I have enough of my own, but couples, individuals, personality disorders, mood disorders. But what happened is that all these smart, kind, amazing, beautiful women came into my office trauma bonded, being betrayed, being controlled, being lied to, being emotionally and verbally abused. And I was like, we have a problem. What's happening here? And that's what made me go back to the research to really understand the breadth of what was happening.
So what are some of the red flags? We love the term red flags. What are some of this, like the subtle, maybe early red flags of narcissistic abuse or coercive control that women can look out for Especially a lot of midlife women are like getting back out there. They're looking for another relationship. And if they've been in one, they might worry about finding themselves in another one. So what are some early red flags to watch for?
First, if you really want to know if someone is pathological, set a boundary. See what happens when you set just a normal boundary. If they respect it, then they respect you. Then they're not looking to control you or force or pressure you. If they don't, more than once, that's a big red flag. Because I always say in love, there's two parts of it: the quality of connection, kindness, and tenderness. But someone also has to give you the space to be who you are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And another one is words not matching actions. They say they're going to do this, they say they're going to do that. But then you notice that the actions don't follow the words. And then when you confront them about it, they get highly defensive. And another thing is that, let's say something goes wrong within the relationship, because it happens, right? They never take accountability. They never say, you know what, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. That happened. They're like, I didn't do that. It was you who did that. They're always victim blaming.
Okay. Those are some good things to look out for.
Yes, and simple good things. And, and in my book, I have a pathological lover checklist, and I have it on my website too.
Okay, so those are good things that people should be on the lookout for. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you're talking to women and you're helping them rebuild and heal from this trauma, what are some key strategies or tools you teach clients to begin that rebuilding sense of self after this emotional trauma?
Well, the first thing is you've been in relational trauma, so you have to stabilize with self-care. Because you're so dysregulated, so destabilized by the relationship, by the cognitive dissonance. And so I always say, okay, we have to have good self-care. How are you sleeping? How are you eating? How much news are you watching, right? Are you exercising? And so that's really important, that we come up with a self-care menu to stabilize. And then what I say to them, okay, they're all experts on narcissism, right?
Yeah.
That's not how you heal. You don't heal by becoming an expert on the pathological lover. You heal by what I say is turning the mirror back on you and becoming an expert on yourself, because one of the main symptoms from a trauma bond is loss of self. You have to lose your identity to keep the couple's identity. So we just turn the mirror right back on them. Who are they? What are their personality traits? What are their attachment patterns? How has their early developmental trauma shaped them? So I give them assessments, and we go on this deep exploration about them.
Yeah, that's really important, because it's really easy to do, especially with social media. You end up in this algorithm downward spiral of...
Yeah. And listen, is it good to know about the traits of the pathological lover? Yes. Is it good to understand what a trauma bond is? Yes, of course. Is it important to know what the red flags are? Because those understanding that makes it very validating, right, for the victim, so they don't feel crazy. But then after that, we got to go into the deep work of healing their CPTSD symptoms, their rumination, their anxiety, their depression, their hypervigilance, their lack of trusting others. How do they trust themselves again, right? Because they don't trust themselves because they've been tortured by somebody. So it's really turning the mirror back on them and teaching them manage their symptoms and learn about themselves.
Confused about which supplements are truly beneficial during midlife? My supplement guide cuts through the noise, offering clear insights into what your body needs during the menopause transition. It's time to support your health with knowledge. Grab a free copy at missvictoriabird.com/free-guides. You'll also find the link in the show notes below. Yeah, you touched on women trusting themselves again. What are some things that women can do to start trusting themselves when they feel that their inner compass has been broken?
Yeah, so the first thing that you have to do is you have to learn to connect to your body, right? So we all have a gut intuition. We all have a feeling in our body when things are right and wrong. And there's a reason we do, because there's something called the vagus nerve, and it's the 10th cranial nerve that comes out of the back of our skull, over our shoulder, and through the front of our body into our viscera. And then it sends signals back up into our brain, and it's called the social engagement system. And it's literally telling us if people are dangerous or safe. But women dismiss it. They don't pay attention to it. And so that's a really important thing, is to really learning to listen to your body. And again, another way that I work with women on building confidence is they have to start to face their fears. They have to start to approach their fears. You can't go to Costco and like take a big box of confidence and take it off the shelf, which I wish you could.
Yeah.
But you have to start to face your fears. You just have to start to approach life again. And then slowly but surely you build some confidence. And when we feel more confident, we trust ourselves.
Yeah. I think one of the things that, when you were talking, it made me think of all the movies and the books that we read when we were younger about relationships. It's all that like women fixing men and all the broken, the bad guys that, and I get that stable, calm, calming to the nervous system kind of relationships don't sell movies. But for Pete's sake, can we stop having that be what people see on television?
Yeah, it's just because we're romanticizing drama and abuse, right? And that crazy excitement and someday my prince is going to come. There's no prince coming to save you.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's something to be said about finding calm with another person instead of chaos.
Yeah, and I think I really think about this a lot lately. And I think that a lot of times, the opposite of depression isn't happiness, it's vitality, it's feeling alive. And I think a lot of times people mix drama with vitality.
Yes, I see that. Absolutely.
Right? So they think, why? Because they're wrecked with drama. But, with these sorts of people, you have dramatic and erratic relationships that really don't allow you to grow and reach your potential.
Yeah. And so when I was thinking about this interview, in your book, you also talked about just that, that wasn't your story that was played on the movie screen. And there are parts that you recognize, but a lot of it is dramatization and a good storyline, or even his version.
Yes.
And so what are some things that you did recognize? Because I wanted to focus this interview more about you and your rebuilding and your healing and your work, because that's where you are today. But to build up to where you got, what were some of the things that you experienced that you did you see the movie and
Oh yeah. I went to a private screening at Paramount with my current husband, and that was so strange and surreal because I didn't really know how I was going to be portrayed. Right? They could have done anything, but luckily it was fine.
Okay, that's good. I can't imagine. There's two sides. Well, there's three sides to every story. I mean, there's yours, his, and the truth. But to see it on that big of a scale, I don't know how I would react. I mean, to see my relationship played out like that.
Luckily I've been in therapy my whole life, so I really processed it ad nauseum. And part of my personal work is going to therapy, but also surrendering. Like, what am I going to do? I'm not going to control or sue Paramount or Martin Scorsese or, this was much bigger than me. And I offer that to your listeners because, I surrendered into it. And now look what happened. I get to use the most misogynistic movie on the planet to help women everywhere. I mean, I couldn't have planned it better if I tried.
Oh, that's karma right there.
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, you know what I mean? So it did all work out in the end, and I'm grateful for that. But sometimes, as humans, we just have such a hard time with ambiguity, myself included. But if we can ride out the ambiguity, sometimes something good can really emerge.
Yeah, I think sitting in the storm is really hard.
It's just hard.
And especially as women, we want to control. I specifically want to control everything. I want to, protect everybody.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And we can't.
No, we can't. And we can't control the narrative that somebody else creates either.
No. And, I know myself. Everybody who knows me knows who I am. I have an amazing relationship with my children. I was getting my doctorate by the time the movie came out. So I was feeling, pretty empowered and I was feeling good about myself. And, we saw the movie. I looked at my husband, I go, okay, it wasn't that bad. I just looked like a young girl who fell madly in love with this crazy guy and was trying to protect her kids. And that's really the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good. And I'm trying to think of how, hold on. I have to be careful how I word things. I think that when I read the book and I saw what you and other women have gone through and how scary it can be and how hard it can be, but then to see you on the other side, having seen you get an education, pivot your career, and now you're doing so much good for women, it also inspires people.
Yeah.
Yeah. How was that going back to school? Was it exciting, scary? Because there are some women that are listening who have no connection to this kind of relationship, but they are sitting in a job they don't love, or they're sitting at a crossroads of, am I too old to go back to school? Am I too old to start something new? And how was that experience for you?
It's the best thing I've ever done. So, I mean, I think I was 40 by the time I finished my master's, right? And first of all, in my earlier years, I wouldn't be a good therapist. I haven't lived enough. And I think it takes time for us to get to know ourselves. Often we're focused on our children if we have them, focus on our relationships, focus on everybody else. And I don't think it's too late, to go back and try something. And sure, was it scary? Again, the unknown. But I don't know. I know that where there's fear, there's transformation. And so I was just like, I'm just going to do this. And every time I was afraid, I just be like, okay, put one foot in front of the other, just face it little by little, and then you get through it.
Yeah. Oh, those are some good words. And to see that you've experienced what you have and you've come out and you're now doing all this good work and writing a book and helping all these women, that's an indication.
I'm married for 25 years.
Oh, right? Wow. Congratulations. Yeah.
It blended our two families. My daughter's actually a therapist. My son's amazing businessman. So everybody did come out okay. But it was a lot of therapy, a lot of work, a lot of intentional mental, emotional, psychological healing to be done.
And one of the other questions that I had for you, for people who may not necessarily resonate with the toxicity of this kind of relationship, yes, but they do find themselves boundaryless and, feeling like they're people pleasing and doing all the things to keep the family going. What are some things that you can tell women that are listening that resonate with that, but not necessarily the level of traumatic relationship experience?
Yeah. I think people pleasing, when we really look at it, if you look at it through this lens, is that get curious. Why are you people pleasing? Are you doing it because when you disappoint people, you can't tolerate disappointing others? Right? And if that is the reason, then you got to get better at it. Because we can't control how other people think or feel or respond to us. And so I think that, it's okay as women to put ourselves first. I always say self-care is not selfish. Like they say on the airplane, put the oxygen mask on you first. And I think as women, we're taught to be so relational. And listen, we have to be relational. We're responsible for babies, right? Yeah. So we are wired, our nervous system, also hormonally, to be relational and take care of others. Yet when we do that and it's out of balance, it's no good for anybody, and we swim in a reservoir of resentment. So I just, give women permission to really say no, pause before they answer, all that sort of stuff. I always say, this is how I tell women, we're just in a relational lab. So take the pressure off having to be perfect and meet everybody's needs and start to experiment with different ways of being and see what emerges and see how you feel.
Those are all good good ways to do it. It's harder than it sounds sometimes. You have to,
yeah.
It's definitely a muscle you have to exercise.
It is, and it takes practice, and you literally just have to do it once and feel how good it feels, and then you're going to want that feeling again.
Yeah. It's kind of like, it's a double-edged, it's gaining control of yourself,
Yes.
but also giving up control of everybody else around you, I feel like.
Right. Not, you don't need to people please to ensure that this person is happy.
Yeah.
That's not your responsibility.
And I think that's something we all need to have like tagged on a magnet.
Yes. Yes. Yes, we do. We do. But it's very freeing once you do it.
Yeah. So what's on the horizon for you, Dr. Nadine? What are you working on now?
Yeah. So my book came out January 9th, 2024. So it was a while ago. And so, I really loved the response to it. Women were like, this is helping me so much. You're validating me. You're educating me. I mean, I've gotten texts and direct messages from women all over the world. You're the reason I left. You gave me the strength to leave. And so that is such a beautiful feeling. This is why I wrote the book. And I do therapy with women, but I'm only one person. So I can't do, therapy with everybody, which I would love to. So I really wanted to democratize what I do. And so what I did is I took my book and I made it into a course, an online course, and I host a whole community called the Surthriver Community. And for $30 a month, it just launched in March. For $30 a month, you get support groups. I teach my book as a course, and every single week I bring in an expert to speak to them and educate them. And they have all the support of each other. And it's going phenomenal. It's so exciting to see the power of community.
Yeah, I feel like when women come together as a community, it's an unstoppable force, and it helps provide you the strength you didn't actually think you could get from virtually connecting with other people.
150%. I mean, I personally am shocked when I see this unstoppable force and how kind they are with each other and how validating. And yeah, so that's really, so between, doing podcasts, my private practice, and managing the community and my social media, I'm busy.
And your family and, all the things.
Yeah, well, my kids are big now, so that's why I have more time. And, I also want to offer this, that a lot of people don't talk about this when you get older, right? There is also a beauty in getting more emotionally intelligent and psychologically intelligent and not having your emotions just throw you all over all the time.
Yeah, there's some calm in that.
There is.
And that's a good place. Calm is a great place to be. That's my mantra almost every day is like, what can we do to get to calm in this house?
It's a good one. It's a really good one because everybody's nervous system just, is like that becomes our homeostatic point, right? Of being calm. And that doesn't mean that, of course life happens. I mean, all we have to do is look at the news to understand that life happens, but you can really build resilience if you intentionally work on yourself and not just be like a leaf blowing in the wind every single time something happens, And that's the beauty of getting older.
Yeah.
You do get better at it.
Yeah, there is some beauty in that. And I will say that your book, one of the things I really loved about it was that it wasn't like, oh, my ex-husband threw out a memoir, so I'm going to put my burning memoir down and this is my reality. It was really, this is my experience. This is how I grew from it. And this is how I'm helping women. And this is their experience. So it's more of a tool than just a salacious memoir, which I really loved about it because that's taking a toxic, horrible situation and turning it into something healthy and beautiful.
Correct. Yeah, it's more of it's more of a tool to like the title says, right, to recognize, escape, and heal from trauma bonds because, I mean, they're everywhere. We just saw the biggest one, with P. Diddy and Cassie, such an extreme one, and we saw how the world really doesn't understand it, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, and it was very eye-opening because there were visible, recorded evidence of an abusive, toxic relationship. And yet it still was, why didn't she leave? And, all the things. And it's really, for anyone going through it, it's very hard to watch that experience.
Yeah. And right, exactly. They're still asking, well, why didn't she leave? Well, when she tried to leave, she got pulled by her hair down a hall and kicked, right? So, and the jury didn't understand coercive control and how she was sending those, sometimes pleasing texts to him. That's a trauma response. You want to please your abuser to keep him calm, as we're just saying.
Yeah, and I think that that's really something that your work is helping bring to light, is that this is a situation that is abusive, and it may look pretty on the outside, and it might be hard to understand, but it does deserve help and accountability and support.
Yes. And I'm hopeful with a lot of, not just my work, but there's so many wonderful colleagues that I have. Dr. Salerno, Dr. Cocciola. I mean, there's so many. Laura Richards, who are really trying to raise awareness about this, because, it just would be nice if it didn't exist. I don't know if it'll ever go away, but when I go to my daughter's house and I see her with her husband and her baby, and they live in a calm, beautiful home where they're equal partners and there's a lot of love, it gives me hope.
Yeah, and that's what we can all wish for our children, right? Is to have better and healthy, functioning, calm relationships.
Yeah, and she has it. And I'm like, oh, there we go. We broke the generational trauma.
Yeah, and that's a prime example of it. I mean, you and her were in the thick of it.
Yes. I mean, she's in the movie, right, at the end. Yeah, so it is possible. And this is one of the other reasons why I do what I do, to offer people hope. Because when you're in a trauma bond, you feel so hopeless, so helpless, that you feel entrapped, like you're never going to get out. But get educated. You can get out, I promise you. It just takes planning and safe, having the right people around you to guide you, and education, and it is very possible. And today, look for the helpers, because there are resources out there. Not, narc talk, but actual good resources.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so many reels you can watch of, this that define and describe the situation. I do really love that your work is more, okay, we acknowledge that this is the issue, but now we're going to work on healing ourselves and getting ourselves strong enough to remove ourselves from that.
Exactly. And that's what happens. Some people will come to me and they're not ready to leave, and that's okay. I'll sit with them for 3 years. My therapist sat with me for 7.
Oh, yeah.
So, and when a woman chooses to leave, it really is her choice and her choice alone.
That's a beautiful note to end on, I think. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm going to attach a link in the show notes for a chapter of your book.
Yes.
And link to your community, so that if anybody feels that they need that kind of support, they can find it there as well.
Great. Thank you so much for having me on, Victoria.
Thank you so much for talking to me about this book. Like I said, I binged it. I loved it. I love the fact that there's a salacious movie out there in the world, and a woman can write her own story and take it and build better from it. Thank you for listening to this episode of Women Mastering Midlife. If something you heard today resonated, I'd be so grateful if you'd share it with a friend who might need a little extra support on her midlife journey. Remember, small changes can make a big difference, and you don't have to navigate this transition alone. We will be back next week with more expert guidance and compassionate conversations to help empower you to master midlife on your terms. Until then, you can find us on Instagram at Women Mastering Midlife, or come connect with me directly at Miss Victoria Bird. And you're looking for deeper connection and support, be sure to join us in the Women Mastering Midlife community. We'd love to continue the conversation with you there. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate and review this podcast. It helps us reach more amazing women mastering midlife just like you. You'll find all the links from today's episode and ways to connect in the show notes below. See you next time.